Hey guys, hope you're doing really well today or tonight. I want to make a quick video on why investing, in my opinion, is a non-negotiable and no one should not invest, right? We should all be investing, we should all be making our money work for us, right? Now, the reason for this video is because I've noticed actually a few people, even in my personal life as well, but people online or just what I'm hearing people talk about, is that they're anti-investing. They're more living day to day. They're more, what's the point really? Especially with the increased cost of living, things becoming more unaffordable. Wage growth. Wage growth is kind of super. It's quite slow compared to what everything else is increasing at. So people kind of, I guess, they give up a little bit and they just say, Why should I invest?" Right? And we'll get into it. But I've been investing since about 16, 17. I think it's a non-negotiable. It's something that everyone should have part of their life, and they should have a basic understanding on. Arguably, it should be taught in schools, but it's not. So yeah, let's get into the video. Okay. So the first point here is that inflation and capital growth is moving much quicker, right? So back in the day, back when your parents were around, they could have likely purchased a home with about 3 years worth of work, maybe also including a few holidays, maybe there's some weekends with the kids, etc. And this just isn't really a thing anymore. People are now penny pinching. They're becoming super worried about what the world's going to look like in a couple of years because things are just so unaffordable and things are just becoming detached from reality. It's it's becoming a place where you need to work more and more, and vacation less and less, and kind of have less of that balance nowadays. Especially if you want to kind of have a similar situation to what our parents would have had back in the day. So we're talking, a nice home in Sydney, for example. Um, and having those regular holidays each year with the family. We're going to have to work a lot harder for that nowadays. As I mentioned before, wages haven't really kept up, and with more options for employers, you can't always get more money. Now, what that means is essentially, let's just say inflation's at 3 or 4% on average over the last 20 years. Wages might have grown at only 1 to 2%, right? Inflation's outpacing, and capital growth is outpacing wages, and the world alongside that is also becoming more competitive, which means that while there are more businesses being created, there are new innovations happening that require employees. If you're currently working in a field that has had there's been a role similar to yours for decades and decades and decades, it might be something that easily gets swept up by something like AI, or something that can easily be replaced and swapped out for something different, right? Now, people have always been saying, AI and technology is going to take over our jobs and whatnot. There may always be a job for you, but even if that is the case, there's going to be someone who's going to be able to work harder than you, knows more, has more skills, or is just cheaper, right? So it is more competitive as well. Unless you're in some kind of really niche role that requires a certain type of skills that are in demand, you can't always get more money, and sometimes you just have to cop it and just work on a similar wage, even though over the years things are just becoming more and more expensive. Many people still do work, 40 to 50 years with little money to retire on. To me personally, it, I thought this wouldn't have been a thing, but it definitely is. If it wasn't for superannuation or retirement accounts in America, this would be a really, really big problem. Obviously, you have government services as well, like the pension and other things that will help fund your life into retirement. But that might not always be a thing, right? So, how can you just sit there and hope that the government will fund the rest of your life into retirement? You might have paid taxes all those years, right? But there's no guarantee that these government incentives will stay there for good into your retirement. And there's also no guarantee that's going to be enough to sustain your kind of lifestyle. So, having not saving anything or not investing or not having a nest egg just means that you're putting yourself at a massive amount of risk. You're putting a lot of trust in the government to fund your lifestyle, or you're putting a lot of trust in your kids or your family to fund your life for you. So to me, that doesn't really sound like a good life. It sounds very uncalculated and very risky in a way. So I don't think that's something that I'd personally be a fan of. Another point here is that the world is becoming more unpredictable and everything just moves really quick, right? I mean, we're talking unpredictability in terms of technology moving very quick. There's wars going on. There's conflicts everywhere. Um, things are getting more and more expensive quicker than they've ever been before. I think it's really hard to have a accurate guess of what the future will look like or where you will be financially in the future. It's very likely that you may overcalculate or undercalculate and not be in a suitable position if you're not investing, right? If you're just praying for the best and hoping that the world will kind of figure itself out, there's no guarantees of that, right? So, you can kind of protect that yourself from that unpredictability and, things moving so quick by having assets and investing so that, these assets can almost counter counter these events in the world and also counter inflation and whatnot, right? This would be really important. And as well, because in my opinion, we live kind of mini lives through our whole life. What you might think today might not be what you think in 5 years' time. And again, you might, for example, want to always stay in Australia and just live here for good. And in 5 years' time, you might want to retire overseas or go travel, as a digital nomad. You have those options when you invest. You don't when you're so locked into doing the same thing for decades and decades and decades, and you don't have any other option. You're kind of locked in. Last point here, unless you want to live a subpar life, you need to make the effort to invest and tackle money early on. The earlier, the better. I do know people that kind of they start investing in their 30s, 40s, or even 50s. Not ideal, but still possible. It does work better when you are younger. Um, all in saying that though, some people don't really start making money until they're 25, 30 years old. They might be studying full time or they might be in debt through other things like university or maybe car loans or something like that. So if you are someone who's maybe 40 and you have a lot of money to invest and you have the right mindset, you might be able to make it out better compared to someone who's younger and they have the time, but they don't have the money to invest. So I think the earlier the better, and the more you can invest in the right things, the better. Now, some ways that you can start investing early. I personally started with index funds and ETFs through Stake, which you can find a link to that in my Beacons AI. This was back in 2018. Now, I've previously made a video on investing in the stock market, which you can have a look at if you need any guidance on that. But essentially, Stake made it very easy to invest in US index funds, ETFs. They were low cost. The actual brokerage stake is low cost. So it didn't take much, upfront capital to kind of invest, maybe $100 or so, and then you can get into the market and just test and try different things and see what works for you. So I thought that was really cool. Another option here is micro investing apps. So I did mention this in a previous video also, but things like Raise in Australia, and there's a few others. I think Spaceship that essentially they take micro investments from you. So for example, if you're purchasing a coffee for $4.90, they might take 10 cents off that and round it up to $5. Or they might just take out a couple dollars here and there and that can be invested over time and then grow into something that's quite impressive. Now, this works really well again if you have time. If you're investing a dollar at 40 years old, might be a little bit tricky, but if you're investing a dollar at say 16 years old and you have until 80, that could make a difference for you, right? Another option here is putting money into superannuation. And I've noted here it could be an easy win. Again, superannuation, something that's taxed at only 15% tops, um, or 15% generally speaking, um, can be easy, especially if you're earning a lot of money and you're paying 47 to 50% in taxes. You're paying that you're paying at that top marginal rate, putting your money into superannuation at 15% as opposed to 50 can be a really easy way to, quickly just move money around while you do lock it up until retirement. This can be something that, even just small amounts of money that won't really make a difference in your life right now, but when you hit retirement, they can, really create an improved quality of life versus without it. Um, right now, obviously, you're earning active income as well. I assume you're working. And when in retirement, you're probably not going to be working, or you're going to be working at a reduced hour per week. So, yeah, putting money into superannuation can be easy and low fee as well if you do it right. Putting money aside for a house deposit is another point here. So in Australia, we currently have a 5% deposit with no LMI and low to no stamp duty, which is fantastic. Something like this, if you're, if let's just say you're purchasing a $500,000 unit, 5% of that would be $25,000. There won't be any LMI, which is great. So you avoid potentially 10 to 15 or even more percent. Sorry, $1,000. And then obviously stamp duty as well could be, you know, 15, 20, 25 grand, $1,000 for purchasing a property, but you're also exempt from that. So that could be a really easy way to get into the property market, and a really easy way to start investing if you were to say live in that for 12 months or 2 years, and then you turn that into an investment property. Most importantly, I think, invest in your education. I've said this lots of times before, but books, podcasts, expert help, articles online will help you grow investing, right? Now, even if there's conflicting information online, which there generally is for lots of different topics, if you can find an author or someone that you vibe with and that you really enjoy their content, maybe choose to, listen to them more than others, and really understand how they invest, why they invest that certain way, and then you can also start doing that as well. Even if you don't find someone, you're obviously going to get lots of different opinions on different things. The argument on real estate versus the stock market, for example, has been going on for ages, and probably still will go on for ages. But you know, just being able to understand what's going on and then kind of tailor your investment strategy to that is super key. So education, do not skimp on educating yourself. Now, a couple of tips to help you start investing. I think first thing you should do is start with a clear goal. So, for example, you could say retire by 40. You could say maybe just turn part time at 30 years old. Maybe it's starting a business instead, or maybe it's simply just have enough money at retirement, right? At 60 or 70 years old, right? So what you want to do is you want to work backwards, and you can use calculators online, or you can just kind of just draw some scribbles and just see what works, right? So if very simply, if I wanted to retire by 30 and I'm starting at 20, right? And I wanted $1 million, you can probably take a guess that it's going to take $100,000 a year net into my account to earn that, right? That's an average. That's a very quick estimate. It might look something like, maybe 80 grand in my early 20s and then 200 grand towards my 30s. And then that might average out to a net $100,000 um, income per year. You might also include some calculations around investing. Maybe you can maybe start a side hustle as well. Um, See what you can do. You're not going to be obviously spot on, but just give yourself a very vague idea. You might be surprised in terms of how easy or how difficult it is to reach that goal, right? And obviously, once you've been able to do that, make some changes in your life, or start putting in steps to make those changes, or address what needs to happen to make that a reality for you. Okay. Now, another point here is to consistently invest in education, speak to experts. There's no better way to fast track investing. Now, I won't touch on education again because I just did before. But if you have the opportunity to speak to an expert, even for free through a phone call, I have a call link in my bio as well if you want to chat about property. But if you, for example, want to talk about your loan options, speaking to a mortgage broker could be great. Speaking to your bank, maybe speaking to a tax accountant for an initial consultation could be really good. It's going to be a really quick way to fast track your education, just because obviously you're speaking to someone who has multiple years worth of experience and they're condensing that into 30 minutes to an hour worth of chatting to you. So that could be really cool. Feel free to test and trial different options. It's unlikely you'll stick to the same thing for 20 years. Like I said, I personally think we have many lives within our big life. I might not be doing real estate in the future. Currently, I am. That might change. But again, feel free to try and experiment. See what could be interesting, what you're definitely not happy with, and then just implement that now, and over time you can kind of just change and pivot and see where things take you, okay, when it comes to investing. Some people start investing in the S&P or something safe like real estate, and then maybe towards the end they're investing in cars, alcohol, wines, luxury art, all these other things, Pokemon cards even, maybe, right? Another tip here is to put systems in place, for example, salary sacrificing, which means that each pay your employer will take money out of your payslip and put it into your retirement account for you, or maybe automatic investments. So, for example, your bank is automatically taking money out and investing into the stock market. That could be really interesting. Obviously, removing that bump that makes it really tricky to kind of just start. Could be really awesome. For example, even like with video content as well. For me, editing was a really big, annoying thing to do. So if I'm just literally recording myself talking, that removes that bump for me. It makes it a little bit easier and enjoyable. So for sure. Last point here, once you start seeing some early wins, all you want to do is continue to invest and grow wealth. So with this point, I think it's almost addictive in a way, where once you start investing, you start doing really well, and you're starting to reap those rewards, you don't want to stop. You want to kind of see where it takes you. There may be a point where you've hit your goal and it's great, but you'll want to do something else, even if it's not financially just grow, grow, grow. You might take that money and learn to invest into new things. Maybe start a business. Because once you've reached that goal and you've gone through the journey of just learning and investing and trialing different things and making money, I mean, it's almost like a little game, and it becomes really enjoyable. And you just want to kind of see where it takes you. So, you know, be open to jumping into something. Don't think it's going to be super super easy and straightforward from the get go. But over time, as you start to invest more and learn more and do more things, I think you'll really enjoy, and you'll thank yourself for investing earlier rather than later. Right. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and a comment below. Also subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Otherwise, peace.